So I'm here with Will Potter, who is a Knight Wallace Fellow, which means that he's a mid-career journalist who's spending some time here at the University of Michigan and has actually become a professor in the Communications Studies department. So, Will, I'd like to talk for just a minute about messaging and talk about it from two different perspectives. So, one, you mentioned the idea of a soundbite and collecting a clear message from a researcher who's commenting on a specific story that you're interested in. What makes a good soundbite?
You know, and I think researchers always cringe at this because they think soundbite means truncating and, only distilling this to the simplest, form, which is kind of true. But to me, a good soundbite or a good quote from a source is something that I couldn't write in my own words. And that's what I tell my journalism students here at U of M. It's what I tell, if I'm editing someone at a newspaper or a magazine, don't use a quote from a source that you could just rewrite more tightly or in a better way yourself. So the flip side of that is every quote you do use should be something that's powerful and is only something that can come from that individual. So about I'm thinking emotion, personal significance, personal reflection, something that's clearly a biased, personal opinion that I can't write in my own words in the article. That really sums it up.
So that makes sense. And as a scientist, I was trained to try and be as objective as possible when talking about my work, right? So I think that there's an inherent tension there.
Right.
So how do you work with researchers to get this type of quote material that incorporates a little bit of their humanity, but still rides the line so that they're not coming off as too subjective?
Well, I think exactly right. It's about exposing your own humanity. I mean, it's being a real person. That means you can be excited about your work. You can show your enthusiasm. You can geek out about this. You can, just be really animated and explain why this is the coolest thing in the world that you want to spend your life researching. I think in and of itself that it's not going to make you biased any more than you already are by choosing this career path, right? I mean, you're biased in the fact that you're choosing this field of research over all others.
Yeah, you're right.
So you should embrace that and explain to the journalist why it's so important. Think in terms of metaphor or comparison. Can you compare some complicated research that you're investigating with a more simple or kind of silly analogy in real life? That doesn't mean you're dumbing it down. It just means you're kind of reframing the discussion to make people think about it in a different way. I always think about that in terms of numbers.
Can you explain?
Well, yeah, so whenever I use numbers in a story, like a statistic, or people have a really hard time grasping what that actually means.
Yeah.
You say 6 billion.
Yeah, small or big numbers are really hard.
Right, yeah. or microbe, or, microfractions, whatever you want to call it. Really tiny numbers, really big numbers. So you have to compare them to something. So, the classic example is if you're talking about extreme distances or extreme quantities, how many times it wraps around the Earth.
Yeah.
We see that all the time. And it's a good example because it takes a quantifiable thing that we know, the size of the planet, which is really big, and compares it to something else that we are not exposed to at all.
Yeah.
So I encourage people to think in those terms. How do you draw comparisons?
And how do you leverage people's knowledge that they have in other contexts and just sort of shift it and reframe it such that it's applicable to this situation?
Right. And part of this is that relationship with the journalist also. I mean, if you're able to use metaphor and comparison and analogy in explaining your work, it makes you better as a researcher and a communicator, but is also going to improve your chances of getting that story published in the way you want, because the journalist is going to be so grateful you explain this in a way that our readers will understand. They'll probably want to just steal it right from you and use that metaphor in the article itself.
That makes a lot of sense. So I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk about the messaging perspective from a reporter's perspective now. So when you're constructing a story, how do you design a message such that it's applicable to a broad media audience?
It's really tough, and it depends on the story. So I think there are a couple big buckets of stories that we can think about when it comes to research. So one of them is the breakthrough that is a story in and of itself. So there is such a big development with, whether or not Pluto is a planet, or, some huge explanation in cancer research or whatever.
Yeah.
That in and of itself just makes the story, right? So that is the messaging. This is a big deal. This is why you should care about it. Another type of messaging is, well, this might not be a game changer in and of itself, but this is how it fits in with this trend that we're seeing in research
bigger
or in culture.
context.
Right.
Yeah.
So taking this, using it as an excuse to put it in bigger context and tell a bigger story. And so there are a lot of different ways you can fit that story into those different media environments that you mentioned. Another one, especially if you're dealing with TV or documentary crews, short videos online, it's the human element.
Yeah.
Or is there a visual element that can convey what's really happening here?
Yeah.
Now that's either a person who's affected, maybe you in your lab. It might be some kind of animated visual that is explaining what you're doing. That visual element might be the story itself.
Sure. Yeah, that resonates pretty deeply with me. So I'm a consumer of science as well as a researcher myself. And I think that the single piece that I remember the most actually had very little to do with the science and had everything to do with this researcher in Japan who studies a very small species of jellyfish. And I remember that element of it, even though I don't remember the details about what he learned.
Well, it makes sense because that's, I think, how we as a species are hardwired.
Yeah.
As far as I know, we're the only species that deals in story. And we might find out through research that's not true. Octopus are pretty incredible. We see them sneaking out of zoos and everything else. They probably tell stories also. But, that narrative element is unique to us. We want to hear stories and we want to hear about other people. And so I think your point is exactly what I would want to hit home to people watching this, is that if you can connect this to human beings and connect this to story, your message is going to last. I mean, people are going to remember it. They're going to want to tell their friends about it. In radio, people will talk about like the driveway moment. Like when you're listening to a story, you pull into your driveway
And you
and
stop.
it's so good that you can't get out of the car. And that's not because of a breaking news item most of the time. It's because the story is good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing those thoughts.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks.